Hey guys, how are you? It's Brandon here. Today I got Norbert with me. Hey Norbert.
Hi, hello everyone.
All right. Today is going to be a lot of fun because what we're going to do is we're going to talk about student strategies, and we're going to talk about the student pathway to Canada. All right. Norbert and I work with a lot of students, and again, this has actually been one of the more popular pathways to Canada in recent years. Student visa application strategies, the student pathway to Canada. So listen, at the time that this is being recorded, this has been a strategy that we've seen where people are transitioning into Canada. I personally love this. And the reason that I think that the student strategy is the best way is because it allows you to ease yourself into Canada. When you come here as a skilled worker and you land, you have so many different things that you're going to have to work with and that are going to be challenging for you. Whereas if you're a student, you're getting Canadian education, right? So that's the first thing. Secondly, on top of that, you're getting Canadian education, you're building your network, which is a really great thing. And you're also getting skills, and possibly, if you're strategic about the program that you take, you're possibly even getting into something that will lead to a job. So that actually, when I look at immigration, I've always taken a holistic approach to immigration where we're looking at the whole picture. Most people, if you've listened to me before, they only focus on the visa right here, and they don't think about, well, now I'm in Canada, what am I going to do, right? So that's why the student pathway is actually a really good way to go. Okay, so let's move on, and we're going to talk about the overview today. So we're going to do an overview of the student visa program, why study in Canada, choosing the program of study, direct versus regular application streams, best practices, benefits, and my favorite, how to strategically use the student pathway to immigrate to Canada. Okay, a lot of people will come here, they will study, and they want to stay. And quite frankly, love to have you. All right. So again, we're going to talk a little bit about that. Norbert and I are just going to kind of go back and forth on different slides. Yes, we talked about it before we dove in here. So we're going to we're going to share our time and our expertise. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in. We should be able to see all the comments. Sometimes the last presentation that we did, we didn't see it all, but we will review those afterwards and get back to you. But by all means, please feel free to post whatever you want in there. Ask as many questions as you want. We'll try to help you out as best as we can. All right. So without further ado, let's dive in here. So Norbert.
Okay.
Man.
Thanks, Brandon. All right. So number one, why study in Canada? Well, Canada is consistently ranked as one of the top countries in the world to live in. In fact, for the last 2 years straight now, a UN ranking of best countries to live in has put Canada at number one for a number of reasons. One of the quality of life here is just wonderful. It's also a great place to study, and I'll get into that a little bit more. But one thing about Canada, it's an inclusive society, and it's a very diverse society. And this is all by design. For the last 30, 40 years, Canada has really worked at diversifying its immigrant population to make this a very inclusive society. People from all walks of life are welcome to Canada. And that's one of the reasons why we do have such a high quality of life, is that people are generally happy in Canada. It's good cost of living is pretty decent here, beneficial for everyone. So that's one great reason to come to Canada. Also, the Canadian education is a world-class education. That is borne out by the number of international students that we see coming to Canada. In fact, Canada now ranks as the number 3 destination of international students, and we're moving up with a bullet. And the government of Canada is working hard to actually attract more and more international students, and they've set up various different programs that we'll get into, like the direct stream applications. But Canada is working hard to diversify the types of students that we bring into the country, whereas other countries are not doing this, and other countries are actually sort of sending out mixed messages about whether or not they want international students. So we're benefiting from that. As of February of this year, there are over 650,000 international students studying here in Canada. Like I said, a world-class education system with universities and colleges that are that are highly ranked throughout the world and well respected. So we definitely welcome international students coming here. And one of the most important things about this, Canada doesn't just want you to come and study, they want you to come study, and then they want to retain your skills. They want you to stay in Canada. We value students here, and the federal government has set up wonderful ways of using the student stream as a pathway to stay here as a permanent resident. Not just on a federal level, but several provinces also have provincial programs where they want to attract students to come to their college or universities, and they want them to stay and be able to apply for permanent residency. So Canada is one of the most welcoming countries for international students. That's borne out by the numbers with over 650,000 students here. In fact, international students, with those kinds of numbers, they contribute to about $6 billion to our economy. So we definitely want people to come and study in Canada, and it's a great place to live. That's about it. Brandon, you want to add anything?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we and again, we never want to dive too much into like the trends and or the hard statistics, but you can certainly see for the last like 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 years onward, there's a steady increase in students. It's really a nice way for the school system here to supplement it. A lot of the universities and colleges are looking for the diversity. As we said, Canada is one of the countries that's founded on this diversity. And you'll hear from international departments that, they really want people from around the world because they feel that it actually really adds to the learning as well. So that is a real drive on the educational institution front.
So, one more thing I'll add to that. With that diversity that we have, the strength in that too is that it makes Canada that much more competitive in the global market down the road with all these bright people coming from all over the world.
100%. And we're lucky we get to see that every day.
Yes, wonderful.
So let's move on. Okay, choosing your program of study. Now, what we've done in this presentation, we get a lot of inquiries, and a lot of times what we do is we're trying to decide and figure how we can pack as much valuable information into our time here with you. One of the questions that always comes up is, what should I study? Where should I go? What should I do? Okay, so what we want to do is we want to talk about, you need to strategically plan your course of study on a number of different fronts. Okay, so the first one is that you need to choose something that makes sense for not only where you've come from to where you're going. Okay, so one of the things that we do is we prepare a study plan with every application that we do, and we let the visa officer know. We say, listen, this person is coming from here, and this program is going to be taken because it's going to give them this skills, and this is what they're going to do with it in the future. Okay, that's huge. Now, I've literally dealt with somebody who was a lawyer, who has a cooking or a chef certification from a very worldwide known school, and wanted to do project management. And it's like, it's all over the joint, right? So, it's a great example because they're so diverse. And there was a gap between school and everything. So I asked the person, and I don't want to get into too many details just because of the personal nature of the file. I asked them, I said, listen, you have to explain what's the connection here. She had a very logical connection in terms of owning a business where there's lots of contracts that are going on, and it was outsourcing a lot of food delivery and whatnot. And then she wanted to grow the business and manage different projects at the time. So she wanted the project component of it. Great. Okay. You have to make sure that we explain all of that, and we have to make sure that we have something in there that allows the visa officer to understand what the opportunity and what you're doing. Now, private versus public institutions, and I'm going to wrap that into DLI. Okay. So the first thing is that when you're working with any school in Canada, they have to be a designated learning institution. And a designated learning institution means is that they've been certified by the Immigration Department, IRCC, to be able to take in international students. Okay. I'm not going to get into the history of why that was, but I'm sure you can understand that, no DLI, no students. Okay. Now, private versus public, there's a lot of different reasons to choose either or, and we're going to get into those in a few other slides. But the biggest reason is that there's certainly a cost difference, okay, or there can be, depending on the program. And the other thing is that generally, as a general rule, if you're at a public institution, you can qualify for a post-grad work permit, okay, which means after you finish school, then you can get a work permit between 1 to 3 years. But we'll get into that in a little bit, okay? University versus college. Now, there's definitely a difference in terms of the cost factor and also the time factor. Most university programs outside of like masters and things like that, but say an undergrad, are going to be minimum 3 years, okay? Education for an international student is more expensive than for a local Canadian. So you also might want to plan this. If your end goal is to possibly stay in Canada, and then you want to do other education, you might want to consider getting into Canada, becoming a permanent resident, and then maybe taking some of that other education, because that would save you a lot of money. It might cost you a bit of time, but again, that's the balance that you want to work with. Okay. The other thing is that colleges, sometimes I find in speaking with people, they're a little misunderstood in that there are college programs, but there's also postgraduate programs that you can do at a college, which means that they're usually like a 1 or 2 year certificate. Some of the more popular programs are global business, project management, which I already spoke about. These programs are very popular and they are postgraduate, which means you already have to have post-secondary education to enter into this program. So for instance, if you want to do a postgraduate certificate in global business management, you already have to have a university degree. Okay. So these are some things that you need to take into account. There's lots of things that you need to plan when you're looking at your program of study. Where do you want to live? Okay. Again, don't think here about just taking a program. I know that there's a lot of different agencies around the world, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that, but some of them will do what's best for them and maybe not what's best for you. All right. So you need to keep that in mind. And if you're dealing with somebody who's got a business that's structured about what's best for them and their pocketbook, maybe you should look at something else, right? But you should be taking into account where you want to live. You want to know where you're going to live, and you want to know where, if types of jobs that you want to do afterwards, things like that. Okay. And then costs, again, you need to be familiar with what the costs are, and we'll talk about those in a few slides, but you need to be able to plan those out. You don't have to have all of the money like up front, so to speak. There are certain concessions that are made in terms of having money available and when you need that, and yeah. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm going to let Norbert dive back into that to the next slide.
Study permit applications are generally right now, they're all done through online applications. And there's 2 streams for international students. One is called the direct stream, and the other is the regular stream. And there's some pretty big differences between these 2 streams. So I'll just go over the direct stream a little bit in detail for you. So Canada has decided that students, and this is a growing number of countries, but right now, students that are residents of 7 specific countries can use the direct stream to submit their online applications. So if you're a resident of Philippines, Vietnam, India, Senegal, Pakistan, Morocco, and China, the direct stream is available to you. And it's important to remember the word residence here. If you're a citizen of the Philippines and you're living and working in Hong Kong and you want to apply to come here as a student, you cannot use the direct stream. You must be living in a resident of one of these 7 countries and living in that country at the time that you apply. Okay, so that's one thing. And this list is growing. Canada will probably add a few more to this list, This year, I believe Kenya is maybe added to this. I'm not sure. So that's one thing. Right now, there's 7 countries. Now, the important thing about the direct stream is that part of the process with this, what the qualifications are, is that you're kind of doing a lot of the visa officer's job for them. You have to show that you have minimal language skills to come to Canada. So you have to take a designated language test in either French or English. And you can see from the 7 countries, some of those are French-speaking countries or populations that will know French, like Vietnam and Senegal. So you have to score what we call a Canadian language benchmark of 7 as a minimal score to be eligible for this stream. You also need to pay your first full year of tuition up front. So that's important, whether or not you have a 1-year program or a 2 or 3-year program. The first full year of tuition needs to be paid up front. And you also have to make a guaranteed investment certificate of $10,000 Canadian. And what that is, it's set up through a Canadian bank where you deposit $10,000 into this account. And so when you arrive in Canada, the purpose of this is that $10,000 is there to help you with your living costs while you're here. So so what you're doing by providing all this information to the visa officer that's reviewing the application, you're showing that yes, you have the funds to come to Canada. You've met the language abilities to come. Not all schools have language requirements, you should know that. But for this stream, it's one of the requirements that you just show that you have this language ability. And the most important thing about this stream and the beauty of it is that if you can fulfill all of these things and submit this with your application, the government of Canada will process the application in 20 calendar days, not business days, but calendar days. Well, right now is a little bit different with the pandemic going on, but generally processing times for study permits can range from 4 weeks to 12 weeks, depending on what country you're applying from. But with the direct stream, it's 20 days, and that's wonderful. And we've seen that been very successful with that stream as well. For everybody else in the world, the other 193 countries, you need to apply through the regular stream. And so it's basically, so what you don't have to show, depends on your school, but for generally you don't have to show some of these requirements. You don't have to have the GIC, the Guaranteed Investment Certificate, although you may want to do that. I mean, the more that you can show up front, the better it is for your application. Like tuition fees, we always try to encourage all of our applicants to pay as much of at least a minimum of the first year of tuition. That strengthens your application a great deal. But processing times in the regular stream will vary depending on the visa office processing your application. And generally that's the country that you are applying from. But there are some visa offices around the world that look at applications from several countries. So, and like I said before, that can be anywhere from 4 weeks to 12 weeks or so. But so those are the 2 main differences, is the processing time is one of the big things, 20 days versus.
Huge one.
Yeah.
And also in terms, just to add on to that, in terms of the result, we generally find if you're going through like the STS stream, that can actually help you out as well. So that's something that, because again, there's the big thing is it's actually your money, but the idea is that the money is actually there so that you have it when you come to Canada. It's not this phantom money that's floating around for visa applications, so that you can actually arrive in Canada with some money and you don't have to have no money to support yourself. All right, so that's the idea.
And that's one of the main concerns for the study permit, is the visa officer has to know that you can actually support yourself while you're in Canada for your entire life of studies. So this goes to great length to show that.
Awesome. All right, let's move on here. Best practices. All right, so government forms. So basically when you fill out the forms, got to make sure that they're all complete. Normally what I would suggest is that when you're filling out a government form, don't be constrained to what's in the form. We always look at that as like, yes, there's the question, but you want to answer the question, and you also want to use it as an opportunity to advance your case any way that you can. The visa officer, when they're looking at your application, it's incumbent on you to be able to proceed with giving and proving your case. So you need to actually give them everything that's there. So I'm never constrained by the form because I always keep in the back of my head any opportunity that I have to advance the strength of my argument for a visa to come to Canada for my clients, I'm going to take it. Visa office instructions. Okay. So depending on where you're applying from, different instructions can exist for different applications. So workers, visitors, students, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to have to make sure that you look and you include the documentation that's required under the specific country guide, okay? Very, very important because those do vary country to country. Identifying documents and family members, again, we strongly suggest for a number of different reasons, not only the fact that you don't want to lie in a government form, that you declare all of your family members, okay? This has ramifications later on if you're applying for permanent residency. We've dealt with a number of clients over the years who have, for whatever reason, hooked up with some bad representation, usually is the case, and has been advised not to put a family member in. Not a good idea. Okay. Make sure that you have all of those documents. If you have a challenge of getting something, especially in the times that we find ourselves in right now, there are workarounds to that. But again, just make sure that you have all of the people there listed. Education documents, obviously, these are pretty key. We want to know that, you're a good student, for instance. That's one of the considerations that will be looked at. If we're a poor student, I know if you look at my transcripts, my high school transcript was, nah. My university was a lot better. And I'll tell you, lucky for everybody that's my client, I had a 94 average on my immigration certification. So good for everybody that gets that. But my previous transcripts were not good, and they were hit or miss. And I really chalked that up to my maturity level at the time when I was studying. And so again, if you don't have a good transcript, don't worry about it. Okay. But we do have to explain that. And maybe there's a different situation that you're in now. I know when I did my immigration certification, I was A, very interested in the material. B, I was a lot more mature, and I took it very seriously. Again, good for my clients, right? Yeah, you have to take that stuff into account because they do look at that. Financial documents or a financial sponsor, again, make sure that you are very clear. If you're sending in documents of like in a local currency, we always put in the conversion at the day at the time. That's also a good thing that you can do. If you're receiving money or support from other people, it's very important that that's documented properly. We have a few different things that we do to make sure that that's understood, and also that it's attested to. That's really important, because you just saying whatever you want on the application, you got to back it up with some sort of documentation. Okay. Medical and police certificates, depending on the program that you want to get into, or depending on what your long-term plans are, you're going to have to make sure that you have a lot of that stuff together. Translated and notarized documents. Again, there's specific instructions on how to translate and what needs to be notarized and what doesn't. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but we want to make sure that those are all presented within the proper format. Those are usually not usually, they are laid out in the guides, and you must submit documentation in either French or English, which are the official languages to Canada. Depending on the document and depending on what it is, if the application is processed somewhere, we have put documents in like Spanish into Mexico because presumably it's being looked at by a Spanish speaker. However, I will only do that with documents that are not key to the application as a risk, because I don't want a key document saying, oh, this isn't translated, we can't do it, turf it out. So best practice, make sure everything's translated, because that's the policy. Affidavits. An affidavit is a sworn document where you generally will say, okay, this, and this is all of that. You will sign it. You will have it sworn as a sworn statement. And it's the same as going into a courtroom. We've all seen the court shows and putting your hand on the holy book or whatever book you subscribe to and saying, I swear to tell the truth. An affidavit is a written version of that. Lying on an affidavit has a penalty, but it also, if we strategically use them, it allows us to say like, hey, look, we're not messing around here. We are putting down not just a letter that we're writing, we're actually putting something down into all the strength that it carries. Travel history and intent to leave. Okay. Any visa within the temporary category. So for instance, visitor, temporary foreign worker, student, these are all temporary in nature. One of the questions the officer is going to look at is, what's your travel history? Have you respected it? And what is showing that your intent to leave Canada? I would strongly recommend against putting down, hi, I'm coming to Canada because I'm going to apply for immigration and I'm going to stay in Canada and live happily ever after and meet my, love of my life. And, then we're going to live in the mountains somewhere and it's going to be beautiful. Denied, right? That's what's going to happen there. Okay. So you have to understand what the officer is really looking at and best practices on how to submit that documentation so that it has a happy ending for you. Okay. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to get Norbert to dive back into the next slide. Benefits of the student pathway. There we go. Norbert, you're on, buddy.
Okay, great, thanks. One of the things that I find most of the clients that do consultations with us, a lot of clients come to us and ask us about coming to Canada as permanent residents, and a lot of them have said, I've thought about the student option, but especially these people with families, I don't want to be away from my family, and I'm always surprised at how many people do not realize that the student visa allows you to bring your family to Canada, and this is a wonderful benefit of this pathway. So for example, say you're married, you've got 2 kids, you want to come and study in Canada, you can apply for a study permit, and under the program, your spouse or partner can apply for an open work permit at the same time, and your kids can also, depending on their age, if they require a study permit, you can apply for study permits for them as well at the same time. So while you're studying here in Canada, you can bring your whole family, you'll be studying, your partner will be working, and your kids can go to school the whole time. And that way you're all benefiting from Canada and you're all becoming a little bit more acclimatized to Canada. So if you are thinking of staying in Canada in the long run, there are benefits to this as well. So one being, the other thing about a lot of students don't realize is that you can actually work while you're a student. You can work up to 20 hours per week while you're in school and attending regular classes. So that's generally, let's say you start in September and your course, say it is a full year course, but your classes actually end around April or so. So you can work 20 weeks a week, or 20 hours, not 20 weeks a week. Because you can work 20 hours a week, and then when you're not taking classes for those 4 summer months, you can actually work full time. So that's a real benefit too. That gets you connections, of course, right? You can either work on campus or off campus. So that allows you to build up your work experience in Canada in terms of getting connections to possible future employers. And one of the great benefits of our program for students is what we call the postgraduate work permit. So let's say if you go to a designated learning institution, a DLI that's eligible for the PGWP, which is the acronym for postgraduate work permit. So let's say you take a 1-year program at a college that's eligible, then you will get a 1-year postgraduate work permit. So that means you get to work in Canada for a year. If you're in a 2-year program or a 3-year program, then you can get a maximum of 3 years as a postgraduate work permit. And it's a one-time deal. You can only get a postgraduate work permit once. But the wonderful benefit of this is it can set you on a pathway to permanent residency. And the way it does that is under Canada's economic programs to come here and stay here, we have something called Express Entry, which is a system used for various programs, including a Canadian Experience class, which is a points system. And by getting that postgraduate work permit, you can, if you find yourself in a qualifying job, and this is important, you have to have we won't get into the skill level of the jobs, but you have to be in what we call a qualifying job that the government recognizes as a certain skill level, and then you can use that 1 year, 2 year, or 3 years of work experience towards points. to becoming a permanent resident in Canada. And also, while your spouse or partner is working, if they're working in a qualifying job at the same time, you get to use those points as well. Plus, coming to Canada and studying in Canada and an institution here gets you points. So the postgraduate work permit is something that is really ideal for those that are thinking about long-term permanent residency here. For those people that, a lot of people want to come to Canada and just study and go home, and that's great too. And the reason they want to come here is because they recognize the quality of the education, and even they can get that work experience, which is only going to benefit them when they go back home. But for permanent residency, it's a wonderful system for students to come here and plan this out. And it all has to be planned out though strategically. You don't want to waste your postgraduate work permit. And I'm sure Brandon can add to this because we have had students come in here who have worked.
Oh, you're reading my mind, man.
I'll let you get the.
I really want to say it again. If you heard anything that Norbert just said in that slide, the one thing that you need to know is that post-grad work permit is a one-time deal, and you need to be so strategic on that. My students, when I bring them over, I'm like, great, you're in Canada, you're a student. Now, do you want to stay? Yes, I do. Start planning now, okay? The number one thing that we see with students is they arrive here, they're like, hey, I'm here, I'm in Canada, woo, awesome, right? And then time to graduate. Oh man, I'm graduating. I don't really have any work experience. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what my qualifications are to be able to get a job. And oh wow, there's thousands of other people that are graduating too. What do I do? Okay, don't be one of those people. You got to plan. You got to do all of that. So let's transition into, and part of the planning is understanding what the stuff is. So let's move into this. If you know me, or you've heard me speak, I always like talking about the strategy of different things. And one of the things that I'm very, very deliberate about is that I like to see people with a plan. The number one reason that people do not succeed in their immigration goals in Canada is because they have no plan. Okay. The number one reason why people don't succeed in life is because they don't have a plan. All right. It's the same thing with immigration. Okay. So strategic planning and long-term goals. This starts right from the beginning before you file your application. You want to make sure that you have a plan in place. And if you've seen me talk, I'm always like, you got to be out here. What's it going to look like? And how do I get there? So you're going to have that plan. We do a blueprint to make sure that we have everything sorted out. We talk about long-term goals and what are you going to do with this, because that's all worked into this application. And we will put things in the application that will be for the benefit later and that we'll refer back to maybe 2 years down the road. Okay. DLI with a postgraduate work permit eligibility. Okay. If you need a postgrad work permit, if your plan is to stay and you want to have your postgrad work permit because you need the Canadian experience, you must take this into account, and this starts at the selection of the school. So many times I've seen people make decisions and they go to a school because it's the cheapest school out there, or because their agent told them to go here, because the agent's looking out for their own interests because they're making money from the school, right? All of these different things. You need to be aware of this. I've actually seen somebody come into my office that the agent has bounced, and very well-known agent has bounced them from school to school for 2 and 3 times. She was going on her 3rd course, and it was a pathway to nowhere. And I sat her down and I said, you know what? I go, if you want to take that course because you actually want to take that course and learn it, great. But you're telling me that you actually want to stay here as a permanent resident, you have no pathway, right? And to make matters worse, well, anyways, I don't want to get in. But I've seen some stuff with students. Students are very vulnerable. They have relationships with agents that will talk a good game, and you have to make sure that you're in line with those. So make sure that you plan that stuff out and you know what it is. It's your responsibility to empower yourself with the knowledge so that you don't get taken advantage of. And that's part of the reason that we're doing these, so that this actually sits out there. So we hope that somebody will find it someday, floats around the internet, and that they will be able to use this knowledge so that they're in a better spot. Okay, work permit for an accompanying spouse or partner. Okay, this is, as Norbert got into, this is always something that's really a benefit about studying here. How are you going to use that? If you're going to come with kids, how are you going to take care of your kids and go to school and somebody's going to work? These are all plans that need to be taken into account right away. Again, something that you want to consider, something that you want to plan right from the beginning so that you can, figure that out. So you don't arrive here and go, what do we do now? Okay. Postgraduate work permit. Again, I don't want to belabor that point, but what are you going to use that for? Are you going to use it for Canadian experience? Do you have the ability to find the job? Do you know what type of job you need to find to be able to get in there? We deal with a lot of students that'll work in jobs, and the jobs will not qualify them for immigration, and they don't know that until it's too late. And again, I know sometimes with students, I find that, oh, it's all on the internet and I can go to the International Center. No, it's not. And a lot of times what happens is that they will, get themselves into a point where they actually can't come back. And there's people that Norbert and I have to deal with that, we're like, you know what, like, you're kind of done. Like, I wish I met you a couple of years ago because I would have set you straight, but that's unfortunate. So again, it all comes down to planning. Qualifying Canadian work experience. If you have that work experience and you're able to get it, that will give you a good chunk of points, which could be the difference, and a lot of times is the difference for you being able to immigrate here. And lastly, the CEC program is the Canadian Experience class. You need 1 year of Canadian work experience within 3, and then you can go through express entry. Again, express entry, and we've already spoken about that. I don't want to curtail into that, but that's one of the options that you can go through. And if you're a student with Canadian work experience, I strongly suggest that you take that one over the federal skilled worker because it's less onerous on you. Okay. When we work with clients, we look at finding the easiest, most cost-effective and direct way to go through the immigration system. You can't see my fingers there, but it's like easy as that. Okay. But anyways, that's generally what we strive for. And as a student, the CEC is generally the way to go. One of the messages that we really want people to understand is we want to give you an overview of the program, but we also want you to think very strategically and have a plan. The difference between success and not being successful is knowing your limitations, right? Knowing what you can do and what you can't do, knowing your pathway, and maybe that will be you being guided by a professional or getting the right information to be able to do that. And thirdly, can you actually execute on that and make sure that you get it? Immigration is really tricky because it's always changing. And currently, at the time that this is being filmed, we're in the middle of COVID right now. So, things are changing almost, well, a couple months ago, it was literally by the day. And we were actively monitoring and getting briefings from the immigration department, and it was going one way and this way. So again, having that plan in place and knowing what your actual goal is going to be, and then figuring out if different things happen, what you can do and how you can adjust. So thanks a lot, everybody, for hanging out with us. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We really enjoy all your support, and thanks again. And I hope everybody's staying safe, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for watching today's video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything Canadian immigration.